Because right now we're in a session of equipping you for the big dreams, equipping you for the different storms that might come up. And so I just want you to kind of share what's on your heart.
Storms are interesting, and you've been there for me for a lot of storms, and just how you were talking about having someone with you for your dreams. I think it's also important to have a core group of people around you for your storms, because Jesus told you storms will come. We've all had our storms. We've all had just some ups and downs, and the thing that I think is really cool, I'm not a meteorologist by any means, but do you guys know, like, the calmest part in a storm, just shout it out, is usually, exactly. So I was reading about this the other day, and one of my favorite books is the book of Job. And in Job 38, he keeps asking God basically why. And I find that we do that a lot in our storms. We'll be asking, why me? Why now? Why this? And more often than not, God's simply saying, because. And we're like, why because? And he says, because I am God, because I sent my one and only son for you, because X, Y, Z. There's no reason to be questioning our perfect God. So then in Job 38, he turns it around and asks Job all of these questions. Where were you? Where were you? Where were you? And it was really interesting for me, because in the center of the storm is when God spoke. And that really hit me hard, because we're so used to either creating our own storm or being swept up into somebody else's. And it's not until the center of our storm, the eye of the storm, the calmness of the storm, where God actually does speak to us. And he's there, and he's present in the center of our storm. And so just for me throughout 2019, going through some crazy storms of things, I've came to the realization for me that there's three things that really kept me grounded. And it's basically based off of Romans 12:2, which talks about the transforming process of the renewing of your mind, and how important it is to renew your mind. And in Greek, the word transform means metamorpho, if you were to break it down. And it's something so powerful of the renewing of your mind, and how important that is daily, to have that free will and that understanding of, today is the day the Lord has made. I will rejoice and be glad in it, no matter what storm I'm in. So for me, there's three things that I kind of, wrote down that I've kept with me, and one of them is to be still. And I know that's really overused a lot, where people say, be still and know that I am God and all this stuff, and everyone's like, that's nice, but how do you even be still? And I know that we were talking about up here earlier is, some people don't hear the audible voice of God, and some people do, and that doesn't mean that you're any closer or any further away from God than somebody else. But what I realize is that when you're still, you cannot confuse stillness with being stagnant. And I think that in our community, we have a tendency to do that, because we think, like you were mentioning earlier, if you're rushing and you're going, that means that you're actually being productive, when sometimes it's the exact opposite, and you can't even hear from God because you're in a certain layer of your storm, and you're just go, and you're not being still. And I just want to encourage you that if you don't necessarily hear from God, the audible voice, he will get your attention in ways that he knows will get your attention. He will speak to you in ways that he knows that are specific to you to speak to you. So an analogy for being still and just meditating, because Jesus talked a lot about meditation, is basically, are you guys, does anyone camp or go in nature? Yes, camping. I love camping. So if you think about it, when you see still water versus like rapids, like whitewater rapids, and you see the difference between the way that the sun reflects off the water, and when you have a lot of rapids and you're just constantly in go mode, and there's no stillness, you can't see the reflection of that sun coming off the water. But if you see the beautiful, serene, still rivers and streams, and it's so beautiful to see the sunlight coming off of that water, that to me is the example of having a meditative heart and being still in God's presence and having his grace and his glory and his goodness reflect within you and reflect outside of you, because he can't use you if you're just a cyclone and you're all over the place and no one can. So when you're still, you can make better decisions. You're not stressed out. You're not, all over the map. The second one is, for me, is to be bold. I think, I know that a lot of the times we don't do things because we're not only just afraid, but we're also afraid of the new territory that God's trying to push us into. And I'll tell you, the devil would love nothing more than your territory. I mean, he would love nothing more than the territory that God has called you for, because he will use it if you don't. And I think it's really important to be bold and to understand that by the renewing of your mind and telling yourself in alignment with God's will that this is what he's called you to do, and to be bold and to step out and do it is so important. And like I said, the devil will take your territory, but the reason why your mind is so important is because your heart is God's jurisdiction, period. The devil cannot touch your heart at all. That's in Scripture. Devil cannot touch your heart, but the devil can mess with your mind. So your mind is the devil's playground. So when you're fearful and you're thinking, I can't do this, or it's not the right time, or I can't do this, waiting, all these different things that you're telling yourself, you have to take back control of your mind, because it's with the mind that you serve the Lord, our God. And you need to make sure that your mind and your heart are in alignment. So that's why it's so important to be still with meditation for your mind, and be bold with your heart. So those are two in alignment. And I would just want to encourage you guys as you go into 2020 and into a new decade. It's really exciting, but also really scary, that you just are bold and know that, God has called you by name, and the devil's going to call you by your territory, and he's going to call you by things of your fear. So just keep in mind of that. And then the third thing, how many of you guys are business owners, entrepreneurs, business owners? Yeah, so the thing that's really cool about that is that we're building something. So that's like my third portion of this, of storms. Even if you're in a storm, just keep building. Again, Rebecca is just a perfect example of that, of how even though she's in a storm, she continued to build. And that's so inspiring, because it's one of those things where it puts into perspective of your time in this timeline of life. And a perfect example of that is when God told Nathan to tell David that he's not going to be the one to build the temple. It's his son Solomon that's building the temple. And I can't even imagine how frustrating that must have been to David, where he's like, well, I've been collecting all these things and building all this stuff for all these years, and it's going to be Solomon who builds the temple. And you just have to remember that as you're building your business, or even if you're not even a business builder and you're working an amazing job, or maybe you hate your job, but you're doing it to the glory of God, you're still building something, you're still setting a pattern, and you're still an influencer for someone who's looking up to you, because you might be setting a foundation for someone who's coming up behind you to make a difference. And that, I think, is really important to remember as you step into 2020, regardless of your storms. Just remain steadfast in stillness, remain bold, and just keep building, and just know that whatever you're building is going to outlast you, especially if it's in God's will. And you're building for the kingdom. You're not building for yourself. And eventually, when it's all said and done, I had a really good friend tell me one time that you actually die twice. You die obviously you pass once you transition into heaven, but the second time that you die is the last time that someone says your name. And I thought that was really moving, of just being able to impact and inspire people so much that you continue that forward until, everyone just continues. It's like a ripple effect on things. So, I just encourage you guys for 2020 to just really keep your mind sharp, and renewed and transformed, and just really empowered for what God has called you for 2020.
I love that. That really just signifies, and that's such a great note to end on, is legacy. Like, what legacy do you want to leave, for your family? Like, your children or the company you're building or whatever you're putting your hands to and creating is a legacy. And what legacy do you want to leave? And not only that, we have that impact on earth, but the impact you're going to create in heaven one day that you have no idea about, that you'll be able to understand and see fully when we're there. It's just amazing. I want to ask you one last question because I love to get practical. How do you practically carve out time in the eye of the storm or whenever you're busy to, like, be still? Like, how do you like, unplug normally from social media? Like, I know you have a lot of things going on. So, like, do you have any routine to that or advice in terms of, like, unplugging, and how does that look in your life?
Good question. So I have two parts to that. So first, like you had mentioned, your mornings with God are really important. You have to, just as much as it's important for you to schedule time to go to the doctor or schedule time for you to make a phone call or schedule time, I think it's really important that you say, no, this time on Monday at XYZ time, I am sitting down and I'm having my alone time. I know a lot of people have prayer rooms or they go to a quiet coffee shop or something. But to be honest with you, it came to the point where I had to set an alarm on my phone. So at 12 o'clock, and that's kind of how Midweek Rise Up came up, because at midday, every day I have an alarm that goes off at 12. And whether I'm in a meeting or whether I'm walking around or in the subway, it's just a simple reminder to just take some time to tuck away, even if it's for a few minutes, because I'm an introverted extrovert, so, like, I need my alone time in order to function around humans. So it's being able to have that boundary of removing yourself, even if it's for a minute, because we get so wrapped up, and then our mind is just this spiral. So if you can even set an alarm on your phone, I highly suggest it. And sometimes, too, it's kind of cool to set maybe multiple ones and give it a different title. It doesn't have to say alarm. It could say, pray for Polly, pray for my dreams for 2020, pray for XYZ. So just make it fun, and don't think that it's like, oh my gosh, I missed my 9 a.m. with God, he's gonna smite me. No, it's not like that at all. Like, talk to him in your car, talk to him, I don't know, in the bathroom. Like, whenever you can talk to him at all times. And even when you're sitting in a conversation, have a like a face-to-face conversation with someone, I've even noticed too, just even the simple act of looking, while you're looking at them, just saying to yourself, like, God, I'm so thankful for this person in front of me. Like, maybe 3 months ago, you didn't even know that person. So that one thing is just setting an alarm or being really intentional about it. The second one, and to be honest with you, and my boyfriend's really helpful with this, is pulling me away. Like, literally have an accountability person where they notice that you have been working until 3 a.m., you're running on fumes, and they can say, close your computer, put your phone away, just be still for a minute, breathe, and just take a minute, just put music on, go running, go work out, go do something just to kind of center yourself. So really having that balance, I think, is really helpful to have somebody, and then also just, mixing your own way into it.
And we need to be that person for someone else, Like, when you learn something, when God downloads something to you, it's always for someone else as well. So maybe there's someone in your life that you need to say, hey, close your laptop, turn off your phone, like, let's go do something, let's be present, let's, pray. Can I pray for you? We all in this room, we have the ability to literally change the world. And I'm